welcome to The Zest, the official podcast for Orange Coast Magazine. I'm Chelsea Ranieri, and today's guest is the founder of Drybar, which is headquartered in Irvine, as well as the co-founder of Squeeze, Brightside, and Becket Quill. She's also a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author, has been featured in Forbes 40 Under 40 list, and received numerous accolades, including Fast Magazine's 100 Most Creative People in Business. Thank you so much for being here today, Alli Webb.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I got to listen to your episode on Jay Shetty's podcast, who I am obsessed with, and got to see him live last year. So I was so captivated by everything you had to say, and I'm just so honored to get to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, he's awesome. I also am obsessed with him. He's so great.
Yeah. So cool. So you're originally from Florida. What was it like growing up there?
Well, I'm originally from New York, but I grew up in Florida. Yeah. But I spent my childhood in Boca Raton, Florida. And yeah, it was very humid there, and that I think really, it was like my hair was so wild when I lived there that I think that's really where the whole hair obsession really started for me. Yeah.
No way. I heard on Jay Shetty's podcast that your first job was a receptionist at a hair salon.
Yeah, one of my first jobs. My parents were entrepreneurs, so I had that experience that was just kind of baked in. But my first job outside of the family was working as a receptionist at a hair salon, which I totally loved because they would blow dry my hair for free, and it was such a perk of the job. And the people, the stylists, I connected with so much, and I loved the whole atmosphere. And yeah, it was a great. It was definitely part of the seed that I think was planted for me, and that industry and loving that world. Obviously, I had no idea it was going to turn into Drybar and what it did, but yeah.
Did you learn how to do blowouts at that salon, or had you known how to do before?
I mean, not really. I paid attention though, and I was so young. I was 16 or something, and I was fascinated by it. And when they would blow out my hair, I would definitely be watching and studying them. But I learned that it's to really practice it yourself, and it's a lot of repetition and a lot of practice that really kind of gets you to be good at it. I love, there's a thing Malcolm Gladwell says that 10,000 hours makes you an expert, which I now have, but back then I wasn't doing it. It was still kind of a mystery to me back then.
Right. And so you eventually moved, I guess, back to New York City, and you were working in fashion. What drew you to that industry? Yeah,
I always thought I would do something in fashion or hair. And I just was pretty lost out of high school and didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I was kind of trying on lots of different things. And one of those things was, working in fashion. And while I was in those years of figuring it all out, and I loved fashion, and I still do. And, I was a tomboy as a kid, but a very girly girl as, a young adult. And so I worked for Nicole Miller. I worked for Cynthia Raleigh, and this was 30 years ago. It was a long time ago. Which is crazy. And I only can even remember that because I have a 19-year-old son, which is also crazy. So it was well before him. So yeah, and I thought that would be my path. I thought I'd do something in that world. I was, and then my brother and I moved back to South Florida and opened up Nicole Miller boutiques. We bought the licensing rights, and, at the ripe old age of 21 or 22,
wow.
I found managing, 2 clothing boutiques for Nicole Miller. We bought the rights and realized that's not what I want to do. And that was actually when I went to beauty school right after that whole situation didn't work out. And I was the only thing that I really love, I thought I wanted to be in fashion, but I was I don't want to be managing a retail store. And not that there's anything wrong with it. It just wasn't the right path for me. And so that's when I was I think I'm going to go to beauty school because it's the only thing that I really love. And that relationship and that time with my brother was really tough, that it kind of propelled me into the decision to go to beauty school, which was, ultimately what I really loved, and then would lead to all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah. And that beauty school, was that the Tony and Guy with Tony and Guy?
That was like, I went to like a small beauty school that had like no name in Boca Raton, which I'm sure is not there anymore. But I did continuing education at Tony and Guy. Yeah. Over like the years and all that.
Amazing. And you were a professional hairstylist for 15 years and then left the industry in 2005 to start a family. And then 3 years later, you started Straight at Home. Can you kind of tell me the story behind that?
Yeah. I mean, I've been a professional hairstylist for a long time. And then I jumped around when I was in my 20s and did other things for a while. And then met my first husband and we moved to LA and he worked in advertising. He's the creative genius behind Drybar. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a family affair. And when I moved to LA, it was when I had my first son in 2005, the one who's 19 now. And I was, really happy and excited to be a stay-at-home mom and loved the, opportunity that I had to be home with my son. And then I had my second son and it was so great. And I stayed home for 5 years, but I did start to kind of miss doing something for myself and kind of got the bug to like go figure something else out. Cause as much as I loved and it was an honor, to stay home with my kids, there was just more that I needed. And so, I was trying to figure out like what to do at like a new mom pace. And because I had done hair now for so many years, I decided to start a mobile blowout business, which was called Straight at Home. And, the whole premise of it was like, because I had just moved to LA when I had my first son and I only really knew moms, I was like, blow out your hair while your baby's sleeping and charge $40 and that'll be like my business plan. And it really resonated with women. And I started, running around LA, blow drying all my mommy friends for $40, and it was like 220s was easy. So that was like the business plan. That was it. Yeah. And I got really busy really fast. And that's when, that's when the kind of wheels started turning for Drybar, because I was like, it's interesting that so many women were wanting me to come to their house, but it was, the price point was good. I was pretty good at what I was doing, but I thought as I got busier and had to start saying no to so many of my local clients, I thought maybe I should open a brick and mortar. And instead of me going to them, they come to me. And so I went to my brother at that point and said, hey, I think I kind of want to try this, and he's a bald guy and didn't have any business in the hair business, but he was, we had always been really close and, we had worked together previously in the Nicole Miller days and it didn't go well.
Oh, right.
It would turn out to be a really great learning for us because we were able, to, we knew what didn't work from the previous time. So it was a very cathartic thing to start again. And because my brother's is such a smart business guy, but because I had so much experience in hair and he had more experience in business, it was like a really great partnership. And then Cam, my ex-husband, he was the creative genius behind all of it. So the three of us was like this perfect to start this. And, Drybar never would have gotten to where it did without the three of us. I mean, I get all the glory, but it was not just me, it was a team of people really, but my brother and Cam for sure were just as important.
Definitely. I saw a video of you explaining that when it comes to business, you look for something that's not quite working and that you can make it better. How did you do this with Drybar?
Well, I mean, back then I didn't know that I was doing that. I learned that over time because I think the greatest ideas are born out of personal necessity. Like we all kind of know that, but I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to come up with the next iPhone, something so innovative and different. Whereas you don't necessarily have to do that. And I wanted to start Drybar, for a couple of reasons. I mean, as a naturally curly hair girl, I used to, beg my mom to blow out my hair or bring me to her hair salon, and it was expensive and, not accessible. And I think I didn't realize it, but I'd always dreamt of a place like Drybar as a kid where you could go for a pretty affordable blowout and it was going to be really good. And so I think I felt like there was an opportunity there. What I learned operating that business and what has been, kind of a North Star for me is as an entrepreneur, And, having had some success, like I walk into most places and I'm like, man, this could be so much better. Like, why? what you probably saw, because I talk about it all the time, because I think that there's a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs, but don't really know what they want to do with it. And I always challenge people or encourage people to, like, what's something that you love out in the world that you wish was a little bit better and different, and there's just there's so much opportunity out there in that, if you look at it in that way. I think what is potentially dangerous is when you're like, oh, I just want to be an entrepreneur to be an entrepreneur because I want to make a bunch of money, which sure, like we all do. But if you're not doing something from a really passionate place of like, I can't stop thinking about this, this is like so important to me, then it's pretty hard to sustain the lifestyle of an entrepreneur when you're working your ass off for something and it's not something that you really love. Then you run into problems, versus coming at it from this place of like, I love this thing. They're not executing it very well. I think I could do it better and I'm going to try,
Yeah. And I read that you and your husband put up your life savings to start Drybar. How did it feel at that moment?
Well, I mean, we didn't have much, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, our life savings, it was like his 401k, and it was not very much money. So it wasn't hard to part with. I mean, it was not easy to part with because it was all that we had, but it wasn't like we had this, my brother really put the lion's share of the money, and, he put a lot more risk on the line financially than we did. But yeah, it was all, I mean, I really believed in it. I really felt like it was going to work on a small scale. Like, I didn't have any like grandiose ideas of like building this massive empire and having 150 locations and a product line, stuff that we did, and that's another, important kind of thing to point out, that like you got to like start small and really prove the concept and really like get it down and know what you're doing and, create that demand and all of the things that you have to do, which I talk about all of this in my book, the message. I don't think we mentioned that, but that, it's like basically the 10 years that I spent growing this business and learning, the things to do and not do. And all of that is largely in my book. Cause it was such a rocket ship that we were on, that we didn't expect to be on, it just took off. And so we had to figure out how to build it, which we did not know.
Yeah. And I loved reading about how quickly it took off. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like the numbers behind it? It was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, we opened the first store and it was, incredibly busy. And then, we realized very quickly we needed to open the second store to meet all the demand. But really, I mean, it's not and I do talk about this a lot in my book, kind of it was not a straight path up. It was like very like bumpy. And, the second store wasn't performing in the beginning, and we were like, oh shit, does this not work? And we had to do a lot to get that store, up and running. And it was really like changing behavior because blowouts were really not a thing back then. And there was certainly like my clients that were, closer to the Brentwood shop, which is the first one, kind of came out in droves, and it was a small shop. It was only 8 chairs. And then we opened Studio City, which was 10 chairs, I think. And it just hadn't like clicked for people yet, so I was like at every like school auction, giving away or selling discounted blowouts. And we did like Groupons, and we had to like really come up with a marketing plan to get the word out, to get women to be like, because it just wasn't as, free. It wasn't as like frequent or like a daily use thing the way it is now. 14 years later, it's minus COVID, it's like a pretty regular thing that women do. But back then it was like, there was a subset of women that certainly did, but there was a lot of behavior changing we needed to do to get people to come. And so it took a while to get Studio City off the ground. And then I think our third location was maybe in Fashion Island in Orange County.
Oh, wow.
And then we opened West Hollywood, and they all took time, and then we finally like wised up and realized we should do all that marketing before we opened a store in preparation of it, because I think naively, because of the success of Brentwood, we thought that we would just open the doors and people would come, which in a lot of ways they did, but it still required a lot of like getting the word out, because we were still so small. And like eventually we built and built and built, and it got easier and easier.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself in the beginning days of that?
I mean, gosh, I don't know what I learned about myself then. I think it was more, we were just like so in the grind, in those early days. It was just like heads down, really focused, working on, building the business and trying to manage, my kids. And my kids were so little. They were like 3 and 5, I guess.
Wow.
So, it was, it was just like all hands on deck, trying to figure out how to like make it work, how to not fuck it up. That was like a conversation we had all the time. It was like, we were, sitting on this thing that was so amazing and resonated with people. And like, how do we truly not screw it up? And that's, when my brother really was the one who was like, we need to hire people who know how to do this and know how to build and grow and scale a business. So yeah, I mean, it was a crazy time. I mean, it was a lot.
It sounds like it. I actually have the Drybar straightener, and I've been straightening my hair since middle school. And this is hands down my favorite straightener that I've ever had. How did you come up with the idea to start a line of Drybar products?
Well, I felt like, in the beginning, I was using products from different vendors, from, all different product lines. And I felt like there wasn't one that was great for exactly what we were doing. And people wanted their blowouts to last a long time, and the products didn't work together. And, it wasn't so much of like an opportunistic, like, let's build a product line so we can make a bunch of money, although that was a bonus of it. And that is what we ended up selling with the company. Mm-hmm. It was more about like, a lot of the products we had just didn't work together. They were too heavy. The smells didn't go together. It was like, it just didn't work. And I wanted a product line that really supported what we were doing. And so, I wanted to make sure like our shampoos were like light enough so they didn't weigh your hair down, and like, the dry shampoo and the shower cap, everything was like through this lens of like creating the perfect blowout and like a long blowout. And so that was such a fun like project for me. And because I had such a strong point of view, because I'd been a hairstylist for so long. And plus I had, this lab of stylists who were helping me, figure it out. And so, it was just kind of like, it seemed like a natural progression of the brand. And, we were approached by, it was a lot, and even like customers were like wanting us to, add like lashes or manicures. And I was always like, anything like that, because we want it to be this like, we do one thing and we do it really well. And even when we raised a bunch of money, there were investors who were like, why don't you, you have this captive audience of like 100 women a day in your shop. Why don't you sell them something else? I'm like, well, I really want to stay true to what we're doing. And I don't want women to feel that pressure of like selling them stuff, but creating hair products was different because they were supporting the blowout, and because it was all like our stylists would use them and all of that. So we raised the first like 26 million as we were growing the business. We earmarked about $1 million to start the product line, which, was really important to me. It wasn't really that important to everybody else at that time because there was so much emphasis on the stores. The stores were growing fast and furious, but, the stores had a cap of what they could do and how many blowouts we could do per day, where products have so much longevity. So, and the product line would be what we would end up selling.
Yeah.
10 years later.
For $255 million. That's insane. Take me back to the moment when you closed that deal.
It's not like it's such a long process of closing a deal like that. Like it took us almost a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was a really complicated deal because we had to separate out the stores and the product, and it was a messy deal. and rough. But it was nice to get to the finish line, but it's like, it's not like I got $255 million in my pocket, like,
Right.
like not even close, so it's not like, and Michael and I write about this a lot in the book, like, this process and how Michael and I had taken money off the table and we raised, and that was really more where I made money versus the big sale that everybody thinks.
Yeah.
It's usually at that point, as a founder, you've had to like part with a lot of equity, which we had. So, I can still see you.
Okay, there we are. Okay, great. Sorry.
No problem.
Do you mind repeating that last part? Sorry, it froze for a sec.
Oh, I don't, I think I was just saying that, it's by the time you get to the point where you're selling a company, a lot of times, not always, like you, as a founder, you're often diluted. So, it's not like, people have like, they hear, oh, you sold the business for $255 million.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like that all in my pocket.
That makes sense. In 2016, you released your first book, The Drybar Guide to Good Hair for All. What inspired you to write a book, and what was this process like?
Well, it wasn't really, it was more of a tutorial. So I didn't like write. It wasn't like the messy
Not
truth.
like the second one. Yeah.
And the messy truth was a memoir of like all the lessons and everything. Whereas the first book, The Drybar Guide to Good Hair for All, was like a hair tutorial. So what my intention was to break down, all of the, hairstyles that we were doing. So if you didn't have access to a dry bar, you could reference this book, and it would help you like figure out how to blow out your bangs, or how to get, the Cosmo curls, as we call them, or how to get straight hair, or whatever it was. I tried to like break down as much as I could in the book of like all the different things. So.
Wow. That sounds really, I need to buy that book because I do not know how to blow my hair out. So,
that's why Drybar worked.
Yeah, for real. So 3 years later, you joined season 10 of Shark Tank as a guest shark. What are some of your favorite memories of being on that show? I interviewed someone who was actually on Shark Tank, and she was like, you don't realize that you're standing in front of these people for like 3 minutes in silence or something like that.
No, I mean, she was a contestant, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember that. But they're not on very long. I mean, it's like with the day that I filmed it, it was like a 12-hour day, and people are coming out really fast. And, yeah, that's funny. I don't recall that, but I was not on that side of it. So maybe I just wasn't paying attention to that piece of it. But no, it was a great experience. And the other sharks were, incredibly kind and generous. And, we had such a great time. And, yeah, it was a really fun experience. And, one of those like pinch me moments for sure, when I got a cold email from the showrunner, because I had been on the cover of Inc. magazine, and he saw it and he's like, we want more female guest sharks. And you'd be interested in doing it. And I was like, yeah, for sure. But I was also like a little like, kind of nervous, and, but they were like, listen, we want you to look good. Cause I was like, you got to make me look good and sound smart. They were like, that's what we want too. So, and I went and spent some time there before, before the shoot, like a couple weeks before, just to see how the whole thing works. And yeah, it was super fun. Everybody was really great. It's such a cool show.
Yeah, I love that show. So your second book, The Messy Truth, it came out in 2023, and I read that you call it a memoir meets business book, and it's incredibly vulnerable and honest. Can you share what it's about for listeners who may not know?
Yeah, I mean, it's really my journey of, building and growing this business, and kind of like touching in on, some of my, the lessons I learned as a kid, and like how I got to the point of growing and building this business. But it's like every lesson I could think of, and every story I could remember, and, all like the ups and downs, like what worked and what didn't work, while intertwining like what was happening to me personally, like a marriage falling apart, my son going to rehab, like my own depression, like, the kind of backdrop of what was happening to me personally, during all of this, and how like amazing it was and how hard it was too. And, I really wanted to shine a light on how, entrepreneurship can seem really glamorous and amazing. And it is. amazing, not usually very glamorous. But, but also wanting to really show the real side of it, the messy truth of it all, that it's not, it does, it takes a toll and there's a lot of sacrifice, and, I wouldn't change any of it, but, it definitely was a lot.
Yeah.
And the book really kind of encapsulates my whole experience, from like how it all started to like how we raised money, how we hired, like everything I could possibly remember about building the brand, and then, everything in between. So it's a deeply vulnerable story. Mm-hmm. And I think it also serves as like, as a guidebook almost to entrepreneurs who are, in the throes of building a business. And I learned so much that I really wanted to share that and give that back and help people like as they're navigating growing a business.
How did it feel writing all that out, all the vulnerable and honest parts?
Yeah, it was pretty cathartic. It took me a good couple of years to get it all out there and to, recall and, and then, figure out how to make it sound good. And, it's a pretty tedious process. I had a ghostwriter who was amazing, who really helped me like throughout the process. But yeah, it was very, some things were really fun to walk back through and some things were really hard. And, there's a whole chapter about my son and everything he went through. And, I made sure he read that and was okay with that. And he was, of course, but he had lots of edits to my first, which was great. So yeah, it was a very cathartic experience writing the whole thing, but I loved it.
Yeah. And you have mini master classes called the Messy Collective that go with it. How can listeners sign up and what can they expect from that?
Yeah. That's kind of a new iteration that I've been working on for a little while. Is this like, similar to what you will read in the book. And I also do the audio version of the book. So if you want to listen to the book, which is how that's how I read books, is like, I can't sit and read. I walk and listen to books all the time. And, there's so many great lessons in the book, but the Messy Collective is like a newer endeavor for me of like, similar to like, but explaining more like stories in this kind of form, in a video format where, you can join the Messy Collective and you get, basically get tons of content from me about all sorts of things like, branding and hiring and, raising money and, all these different things. And the idea is to create this community where, other founders can connect with each other. And there's like that kind of community where they're able to like help each other, because we're all kind of going through very similar stuff at the end of the day. So, yeah. And then, over the course of the year, we'll be dropping in new stuff and doing like live chats and all sorts of perks to getting involved with it. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to launch it because I have felt this like real pull to give back and to help, all their other entrepreneurs as they're growing their brands,
Definitely. It sounds amazing. And so you have other companies that you've co-founded. So under the umbrella of the Feel Good Company, which you're the advisor and investor of, you've also launched Squeeze, Brightside, and OK Humans. And you've also co-founded Becket and Hill, and you're the president at Canopy. And then in addition to that, you're on the board of several companies as well. How do you decide what companies to create, invest in, and advise for?
Well, they're all different. Squeeze was kind of the second company that we decided to do after Drybar, although we did kind of start it. It was really my brother's brainchild and, similar to Drybar and like how there were two bad choices, like a discount salon or, like a Fantastic Sam's or a full service salon. There wasn't anything like in the middle. And the same thing was kind of true of Squeeze. Like there's like the discount massage places. And then there's, a spa where you're paying $300-$400 potentially for a massage. And we wanted to create something in the middle that was like an amazing experience. And the big differentiator of Squeeze is that you book on an app and you tip on an app. And so everything happens through an app, even though it's a brick and mortar and you go there. And we pulled in Brittany Driscoll, who was our former head of marketing at Drybar, to run that. And she's amazing, and our CEO and co-founder Squeeze. And yeah, I mean, we just, it was like a passion project of my brother's, that he really wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to run that company, and I don't think I would ever be wanting to run a company again the way I did Drybar. Like, I think I'm too tired from that. It's great to be like in this, advisor role where I have this very zoomed out view, and we advise Brittany, and we step in and we're, on the board and do all that, but she's really running it. And, yeah, I think there was just, there was an opportunity like I was talking about before, where it's like, nobody's doing massage. Great. So
yeah.
we're gonna, so that was that. And then, Becket Quill was a good friend of mine who was running this jewelry company, and she kind of needed a little bit of help to get it to the next level. So I joined forces with her. And then, Brightside is this infrared yoga studio, and that was Cam's idea. And that's how that came to be. And then OK Humans, it's kind of a longer story with a girl who worked for us years ago, wanted to start this like therapy concept similar to Drybar. So yeah, I mean, we kind of, just trying different things out to see, but all under the umbrella of the Feel Good Company, and like making people feel good in different ways.
Oh, I love that. They all sound like such amazing companies. So you've had such an incredible career, and I saw a video of you on Instagram saying that you might get back into the hair industry. What can listeners look forward to?
I might. Well, I can't say yet,
okay.
But I am working on something that I will probably announce probably towards the end of the year, but that I'm very excited about.
Oh my God, amazing. Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. But before I let you go, I have 3 final questions for you that I call the Thoughtful 3. What advice do you have for someone who might feel burnt out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we live in a society of people who are in this like culture of like, we work ourselves into the ground. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons, and something that I definitely talk about in the book, about how I didn't, take time for myself, and I didn't take care of myself kind of emotionally and mentally along the way. And I think that, I know that's where burnout comes from. It's just inevitable that you're going to get burnt out if you're not taking care of like your mental well-being, So I feel like that's a big thing of like, and it's a rub for entrepreneurs, especially when you're so passionate and you love what you're doing. It's like, you're like, I just want to do this all the time, and I love it, and I don't want to not work. Like, it doesn't feel like work to me, and all of that. And it's all true. But there is like, you almost have to force yourself to like take a step back, like take time away from your phone, like leave it for a little while, like let yourself, calm down from it, that you're not constantly thinking about it. I think that makes you want to stay in it longer and really helps avoid burnout. And like, whatever that means to you, if it's like taking a nap in the middle of the day or getting a massage or whatever it is, like, I think we need to be better about giving ourselves permission to take care of ourselves more.
Definitely. What would you tell your younger self knowing what you know now?
Not to worry so much. I mean, it's not that serious. It's like, I think I tend to be like a pretty serious, like driven, all business kind of person. And I have learned that like the worrying and the stress that causes is just like kind of not worth it. We have such a short time here that it's like such wasted time worrying and stressing about things. And not to say that like, you want to be cognizant of like what you're doing and be thoughtful and all of that. But I think that like worrying about it doesn't do anything, other than cause stress, where it's like you put your best foot forward, you do your best job, and that's all you can do.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines from a movie is, worrying is as successful as trying to solve a math problem by chewing gum. I was like, that's good.
Like, there's no purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. I still do it though. But, what is the best advice that you received early on in your career that you still follow today?
Probably that feedback is a gift, that being open to feedback and being able to like really receive it and learn from it, it really is a gift. I mean, it hurts at first and it stings when someone tells you they don't like something you're doing or saying or whatever, whether it's personal or about your business, but it's really great information and to know, and you don't have to listen or believe it. But, I think if you're open and you can like go inward and be like, maybe there is something to this, then I think it's really an incredible gift.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. I loved learning about your story and getting to talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice to meet you too.